Hello, guys. Welcome back to The Ones. We are a Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live discussion podcast. Um, Look, if there are like three things I know for sure, it's that the earth is round, Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election, and Michonne is the love of Rick Grimes' life. And those are not up for debate. So let's get right into episode 4. But before we do, let me just say this. I hope if there is an episode or season 2 that AMC does not give out any screeners. Because for some of y'all that got them, y'all were bugging. But
They know how to act.
Ooh, man. So we're gonna get into this episode. This is like the episode it feels like we need it, as far as these two characters getting some time alone to have to communicate about what's going on and why they're not on the same page. So we safely, survive the, helicopter incident. And they show up in this like condo apartment complex, whatever, this condo, and this high rise. It's really nice. And Michonne lets Rick know, like, we needed a timeout. And so he's checking out the place, and this place has like this automated, it's like AI, right? It's got voice activated, you know, controller for the AC temperature. We're gonna see a Roomba coming up. It's really nice. And so at one point, Rick is like checking out the place and he's turning on the water, and we see him in the kitchen turn the water on. We have running water. And I just want to say, if you're going to show us we have running water, then I felt like you were preparing me for like a shower scene, and you did it. So I was highly disappointed. Why do we need to know? We didn't see anybody doing nothing with no water.
Well, I mean, she flushed the toilet too, and I mean, there was nothing of that either, so I think it's okay.
So, Michonne is first thing she does is she gets undressed and she changes. And so, Rick is watching his, Nubian queen undress, and he sees, her scar on the back, the X. And she takes note that he lost his, what's the thing called? His PRB. And so she grabs it, hers. And then she goes like looking around like any good nerdy Black girl, and she's looking at the shelf, the books and everything, and she sees this Beverly Cleary book, and she mentions Judith and how Judith would like it, right? And then Amani, she kind of goes into a little bit of her backstory. And we had a submission from our dear friend Jess, B&M, for those who don't know, a very talented writer. So she says, stunning episode. Amazing to hear these characters have actual dialogue and see them express a full range of emotions and their feelings for each other. I'm curious to see what y'all thought of the career interests Michonne mentioned. Was she not a lawyer? Were they a nod to Denai's past, common fanfic professions, or do we all just share headcanon with Denai? So, Amani, what'd you think of those different interests she had?
Well, I mean, I have to be honest, one of my pet peeves for the show has always been historically that we don't know Michonne's last name and we don't know her profession. Like, I feel like those are things that that help really tell you who a person is. And the fact that we don't know those things about her always like unsettled me a little bit. So I always chose in my mind to use the canon of the comic book, the graphic novel, which said her last name was Hawthorne and her profession was she was a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And I thought we got sort of like soft confirmation of that in what is it, the 9th season, where when she was making that charter, and she knew the difference between a constitution and a charter. She thought she had a handle on actually drawing it up. Like, I thought we were getting concrete evidence that she was a lawyer. like the graphic novel. And so I was honestly a little disappointed. I like the idea that, she went through, computer science, creative writing, like she played with a lot of things. She's a very intelligent woman, very clearly. And so you can kind of get it. But then at the end, she was like, she dropped out. Now, maybe she meant she just dropped out of those majors and decided to like go on some like kind of pre-law track or something like that. Or did she mean that she was a college dropout? Nothing wrong with being a college dropout. I just thought she was a lawyer. So I was a little off put by that, and I mean, I saw the parallel between, Michonne and Denai, but, um, she was not a cop, but Denai's not a college dropout. So I was kind of confused a little.
Okay. Well, what about you, Ashley? Do you have any thoughts about her different interests?
Not really. I mean, yeah, I did kind of think of Benai for a moment, but I also was like, going through all those different majors is very relatable. If you've been in college, it's like I cannot choose. So that made a lot of sense and it made me chuckle. But yeah, I was also a little bit surprised she was maybe a college dropout. That's what I got from her saying that. So it was surprising, but I kind of in a good way because, you think of Michonne as, perpetually having her shit together, as she told Andrea. And so to know that she was a little lost at one time and, still figured it out, I think is a testament to Michonne is.
Thanks. So she, had this little slick comment for Rick, and, Rick has a blackety black wife.
I'm so sorry, but we were supposed to talk about our overall thoughts, right?
Are we? I mean,
Yeah.
okay. I forget that. But yeah, go ahead. What were your thoughts on the episode overall?
Me?
Ashley, yes.
Oh.
Yes, you brought it up.
You're the one who brought it up.
She's the moderator. I was waiting for her to say a name. So yeah, I love this episode, of course. Like you said, I can't help but think how much more I would have enjoyed it if it had been a real surprise, because I kind of understood what it was going to be before it came on, because AMC just sent screeners to everybody and their moms. So I just kind of lament that part of it, but I still really enjoyed it. I will say, I think the foundation of the episode is maybe a little shaky, just because I think Michonne would understand what Rick must have gone through, not to make it home in 7, 8, however long it's been. She said it in episode 2. And I think if he had just told her what was going on, Jadis threatening them, it would have been a different story for her as well. So like the miscommunication trope was really trope in here. But if we can see those two things, I think it's a really great episode of TV. It was like Marriage Story, if that had been a good movie. It's like Before Midnight and Blue Valentine, which are two of my absolute favorite movies. I really loved it. The Nice Talent shined through as a playwright. And it was like a play almost, in the way that it was like a two-hander with just these two people in one setting, kind of just talking. Mm-hmm. And like it could have been set at the Barrymore Theater and they wouldn't have known a difference. So I really love that. I love the angst and the emotion and the very real trauma that we got to the root of here, as well as the humor, And I remember seeing a clip, them being kind of surprised by how funny it was. So same thing here. I did not expect to laugh that much, but she's funny. So yeah, great episode overall.
Okay. Imani.
I think that I'm always the like resident naysayer. I think that the episode parts were a bit greater than the whole. I wasn't as like bowled over by the entirety of the episode, but I had a lot of parts of it that I very much enjoyed. But overarching, wasn't as happy with it as I thought that I would be. I hoped I would be. I guess I just kind of wanted more and wanted some of their discord to make a little bit more sense, maybe. I don't know. I'm still sort of in process with it. I've watched it a bunch of times now because, like I said, I do actually enjoy lots of elements of it, but it just didn't cohese for me.
Okay. And I think throughout the episode, or throughout us talking about the episode, there'll probably present themselves, the issues that you had. I think overall, it feels weird to say it that, and I know people probably think that we nitpick. And so part of it may have been, thinking it was going to be one thing based on everyone's, talking about the episode and maybe it not being what I thought it was. There were definitely times when I was like, okay. But I think overall for me, and it doesn't take away from the episode, but it was about the characters and there were some character choices that kind of shaded it. But, you can disagree with a character or not even like a character and still enjoy an episode. It's kind of like for book readers, for me, like a lot of people talk about unlikable characters. I love a good unlikable character in a book. Like if there's an unlikable character, like I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna you are not going to, deter me from reading this book. Like if you say, oh, she's so unlikable, and I'm like, and they give you like a 1 star, I'm like, ooh, my next read. I love it. So I don't, not liking a character or their choices doesn't mean that I wouldn't like the episode. I don't know. And I think when we get into it more as we talk about it, maybe we'll see how it shaded it overall. I still think not only this episode, but the first 4 are some of the best Walking Dead episodes that we've had in years. Like
Definitely.
To me, it's not even close. If you told me these 4 episodes are what we're gonna get, if that's what The Walking Dead was for like the last 5 seasons, like I would be ecstatic. So just to put it in perspective, I think it's head and shoulders above what we've been getting prior to this. But Ashley, you mentioned a play, and Denai is a playwright. And so it kind of felt like that way, even in the way that they had these larger moments, because you had it was like a fight or whatever. It's like you had round 1 or act 1 when they were in the living room and they were arguing then. Then you had the next part, act 2 or round 2, they were in the gym. And then, round 3 or act 3, they were back at the apartment and specifically in the bedroom. So in this first round, let's get back to that. Ashley, when Michonne, tells Rick that, oh, you're quite the creative writer yourself. And that's how it slips out about RJ. What were your thoughts about that?
Interestingly, the reveal that RJ went kind of how I expected it to go, that would come out that way in like a heat of the moment. And so I thought she would do that. I did not think Rick would respond that way. Like he was like, yeah, so anyway, I need the PRB. And I'm like, dude. But I understand exactly why he does it. I'm not sure why Michonne doesn't, but her emotions are high. And so I kind of like that choice because it makes sense for each of them. And there's a moment where they're like yelling at each other and like she claps and it was the frustration there. It was so palpable and so recognizable. I love it so, so much. Also, Rick being utterly confounded by the technology in this apartment is hilarious. It's like, what is that? And also, I'm sure Denai is such a good writer because there's these little moments like the temperature control kind of acted as a gauge for what's happening between them. Like, I thought that was really well done. Like when they stop yelling and start talking, it says the desired temperature has been reached. And then when they find a way out and Rick says he's still not coming home, they're like, temperature control malfunction. And it's just like such a beautiful deal. So, love this first argument.
Yeah. And Monty, Michonne says to him during that first round, like, I don't like who you are with them. Right. And he says to her about that PRB, like, because he that's all he's thinking about. All he's thinking about is getting back. And he says to them, says to her, are you going to give it to me? Like, and so when they're arguing back, so when
you forgot. That's like why
I did. When they're arguing back and forth, and he's talking about the PRB and all this other stuff, and talk about that part.
Besides me being like, oh,
yes,
they said it again.
yes. Besides your spirit fingers going on, yes.
Exactly. Well, of course, I love I one of the things that I did love about this episode was the constant arguing, not because I wanted to see discord between Rick and Michonne, but just because I feel like we very rarely saw any discord between them. They almost always were of one mind. Of course, there were exceptions to that, like notable exceptions to that, but they were frequently of one mind when they had like a goal and they were, doing something. Plus, I mean, I think also by virtue of the fact that they were constantly like trying to survive. And now here they are in what's more like sort of cushy, right? This like ultra modern apartment. They've got time. Although Rick doesn't feel like they have time, but so they have like a moment to like really hash it out. And now you really are seeing their kind of personalities come out, and you can see them like having a real like conflict. And but I did like that there was that. I don't even know that Denai, unless she like looked into my brain. I don't know that was even really a callback, but it felt like one to me, where it's another moment where they were not of the same mind about how to deal with this existential threat. And he's like, we have to acquiesce. And she's like, no.
Just talk specifically about what you're referring to, just in case people aren't sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. So in Service, I think we're talking about Service in season. Yes, thank you. 704. This called back to me when Negan wanted all the guns. We've talked about this before in the preview episode, and it's one of my favorite scenes. So I saw it immediately, even if it was not deliberate. So Negan wanted the guns. Rick was trying to find all the guns. Michonne had a gun. She came back. He realized she had this gun, and he was trying to get it back from her in order to appease Negan. So now they're arguing over this PRB because he's trying to appease the CRM. And so he comes to her, and once again, Rick, with anyone else, would have just taken it. It wouldn't have been a question. He would have done whatever he needed to do to just take it. But with Michonne, he's like, are you going to give it to me? And it just was like, yeah. So yes, I love that part. My thesis.
And so at one point he finally talks about Jadis. And he talks about, how she's already threatened to destroy Alexandria and kill everyone they love. And Michonne, they kind of go back and forth with it. And he also mentions that Jadis said that she thinks, you and me, that we could do anything. And at one point, it's like Michonne is reflecting when she's like, okay, well, this Jadis thing, okay, we'll kill her and, we'll just destroy that file and then we'll go home and live happily ever after. And it was the most flippant reaction that just like made no sense. And I also feel like nothing should make sense for either one of them. This is a wild situation to be in. Like, you're not going to be sane. You're not going to be rational. I kind of get it. But you also know what you've been through in the world. And, and even though ultimately you two always kind of come up on top, to underestimate, Jadis. I mean, at this point, she's like a cockroach. Like, she is going to survive. Like, and to underestimate someone who is always surviving, who's always putting themselves first, it just seems wild, crazy. But she asks Rick, "Do you love me, Ashley?" And then she ultimately gives him the PRB. And what were you feeling in that moment with the whole Jadis, with her asking him, do you love me?
Yeah, that kind of broke my heart because we know how much Rick has been like yearning for Michonne. I wish she had been able to see all the other letters he'd written to her that we saw in episode 1, where he's just like, basically all he says is, "I love you so much, and I wish I could be with you." And instead, the only letter she gets is, "You need to go home," which, I'm still like flabbergasted by that, Rick
My
Grimes. But
gosh.
yeah, I really felt bad for her in that moment because she's looking at someone thinking this should be an easy decision, and she can't quite grasp just yet, like, this isn't. And there's a moment right before that, I think, where she says, "You want me to go?" And he's like, "I want you to live."
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that's not clicking, but that's like that's the crux of his argument is, "I just need you to stay alive. I don't care about anything else. I don't care about myself. I just need you to get home to our kids." And she's like, "I didn't come all this way just to go back home to my kids without you." So I get it. But yeah, I thought that was really heartbreaking that she can't even, he's so broken that she doesn't even see how broken he is, and she can't grasp why he doesn't want to come home. And so when she asked, "Do you still love me?" I was like, damn.
Right. Because it does feel like, what are you not getting? Like you as Michonne, you keep saying like basically that this is not the man you know. And I feel like, well, that should tell you something, right? And and we get to the point where her back is kind of, to the window, and then he looks out and he sees that their helicopter is in the side of the building. And he says, "You saved our lives." And this is one of those moments when I was like, really? Because look, I think the reason I always say we a lot, and I don't want to speak for you guys all, but I do feel like we all kind of started writing stories with Rick and Michonne, and specifically Michonne, because we wanted to humanize her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that means vulnerability, that means flaws. And she is very good at being vulnerable in particularly in front of Rick, right? But because when she first came on the scene, it was all about her being a warrior. And she was all about, being, at one point, then that guy in season 5 or whatever was like, she's a weapon with a she's a weapon with a weapon or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, but if you're not careful, and I've seen it on Twitter, and I feel like maybe I should just stop looking at Twitter because I always seem to get very irritated by stuff that I see on Twitter. But it's like, oh, our girl, like she's always right. Like, she's always got the answer. And if you're not careful, that's just the other side of the same coin of not being human.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't be right all the time and make no mistakes and make no missteps and still be a full, well-rounded human being and character. And so it may be, making her perfect and always making the right decision. She's not necessarily a magical Negro, but I say it's more like the magical Negro's cousin. Like you're in the same family. And so, but there was a quote, and part from Denai, and part of it, she talks about Michonne, and she says she's not a perfect person. And it's great that she's been shaped from the very beginning to just be a one-woman army that had to learn how to open up to others. But she can also go back to being a one-woman army if she needs to. But I just appreciated the fact that she's very well aware that her character is not perfect because there's no such thing as. And so when you have that moment where it's like, oh, it becomes see, Michonne was right. If she didn't just like yank him and toss him out of the helicopter, then they would have died. And it's like, no, you could have just wrote it a different way.
Yeah. The other thing about that is, other than it being wholly unnecessary, I thought, she made that gamble and they made it out safely. And I don't love that she was justified in that way because she was being pretty reckless. And I think the other thing is her decision could have stood on its own because they did get to the place where they needed to be. Like, her saving their lives didn't have to be part of the equation. She saved their relationship. And so I don't know why that needed to be. Oh, she's a superhero too. Like, that was just unnecessary. And also I chuckled at them being like, now Jadis will assume we're dead. 2 minutes ago, y'all said Jada thinks y'all can do anything. So why would she not come look for you?
Amen. Right. I think Jadis would be a fool to not check this
Absolutely.
out for herself.
Yes.
Like, I don't care. I don't believe them. I don't buy it. They probably plotted this whole thing. I don't know
Exactly.
how, but
They
I gotta
probably
make sure.
crashed the helicopter and jumped out.
Yeah.
That would be what Jada thought. So
Yeah, it would be wild to not assume that Jadis would come looking for them to verify for herself.
yeah.
So, but time and time again, and he's very firm, Rick says, I'm not going home. Like, I'm not going. And I felt like this first round of them having this discussion, this argument was about him saying, I'm doing this for you and for our kids. I'm doing this for the people I love, right? That's why I'm not leaving and I'm not going back. And Michonne mentions, she says, the thing Nat said to her about I know how it ends. And then she and I love that moment when she was like, this son that you haven't asked about. Like, go there, talk about that part, Amani, where she talks about, RJ and how Rick is not asking about his son.
I thought it's such an interesting thing because I thought she didn't notice that he wasn't until she said it. I thought that in the midst of their argument, she had noticed that he wasn't very inquisitive about RJ. And so it was actually quite like encouraging to see that, because I felt almost like they were talking past each other for a lot of it, and they weren't really hearing each other speaking. Like, if I might as well just put it out here, if we're on sides, if there was like a team Michonne, team Rick, I'm actually on team Rick, right? In this. And so I it was frustrating for me, even though I completely understood Michonne's side of it. It was frustrating to me to constantly for her to constantly like be pushing back in this way. But there were moments when I felt like she had the right of it. And that was definitely one of those where she was just like, the idea that that I told you you have this additional child and you are very uninterested in this is a cause for concern. And being back on Team Rick, that should have told her something too. Like, the fact that he is not curious about this tells you something's going on, upstairs that you don't fully grasp. And I think she starts to get like like a clue that that's going on, but she's still very much in like snarky mode right now. And so she's just kind of like hitting him with like rejoinders, kind of like, oh, well, I told you about your son. You're not interested. So let me just tell you a little bit more.
Yeah, because even when she first told him, like, his name is Rick, call him RJ, the first thing he does, going back to that, is ask about that PRB or whatever. And she was like, I just told you, you have a son. Right. And so, but even when she talks about RJ and talks about how he calls himself the little brave man, and when she's not looking, he has this little smile just for a brief moment where he just smiles about the idea of RJ calling himself little brave man. And then she digs again, Ashley, when she talks about Nat, and she says, when your people killed, my friend Nat, who your people killed. And he pushes back and he's like, they're not my people.
They're not my damn people.
They're not my damn people. And then the other heartbreaking moment, she had a lot of them, when she's like, this is not how I imagined this going in my head. Like, talk about that, Ashley.
Yeah, I think that is a lot of the issue from Michonne's side, is that she saw this going so differently. She imagined, we've been apart for all these years. I finally, by some miracle, am able to find you. You say we're going home, and all of a sudden you're like, no, we're not. She cannot process that. That's not the man she knew. That's not the Rick she knew. She said, you don't choose to stay in prison. I don't know why you are. again, like Imani said, like that should have been a big sign that there's something really wrong here. But, and also that you should be scared. I don't know. But she's like, this does not make sense to me. And it's angering her. It's frustrating her. And I completely understand that. So I give her that grace. Like this person that she left, or who left her really, is not the person that has returned to her. And that's hard to swallow.
Right. And you can hear him trying to convince himself. Like, it didn't even sound like he believes what he's saying, because he's like, yeah, I have to stay, and, Okafor's vision, and we can change things. And it's like, really, it was like, who are you trying to convince? Because you don't even, you really sound like you were trying to convince yourself, not just her, that this is the right thing for you to do. You may be doing it because you want to protect them, but this is not where you belong. And it feels like, and I do feel like, even when they were on the in episode 1 and 2, when he was in a helicopter with Okafor and he says, "I'm in," like, I really did think there was a part of him was like, yeah, I'm in. Like, I've accepted. He's accepted that he's not getting home, so he was in on this mission. And Michonne is like, again, very flippant with him. And she's like, oh, you're staying because maybe you're going to change the CRM one day. And because there are people who, one day maybe come after us. And it's like, but okay, but your idea of let's just go kill Jadis and, like, destroy this file has a lot of unknown variables as well. Right. But anyway.
Although I think that was the best idea that either of them had come up with. Let's not ignore the problem, but also let's not just go back and stay, Rick. So, I mean, if they could have talked through that, I felt like that was the better solution, but.
Yeah, but I think that's what drives this and makes this conversation, this debate. It feels like that's the oxygen that kind of feeds the fire, is that there is no simple solution, and that there's full of unknowns, and they're both dangerous situations. But I do love that eventually we get to that point where he sees it, but but she doesn't know. She doesn't know what it is she says to him, but it's not that. Like, you're not telling me the truth. I don't know what it is about you. I don't know what's going on, but, I tried. I came, to get you. You ain't having it. I tried to convince you. So I'm done. I'm gone. I'm leaving. I'm going back to my babies. And she walks out, and she kind of slow walks. Well, she walks and then she stops, because of course she's hoping that he's going to come and he's going to tell her, okay. Like, we could do it your way, or don't leave, And he eventually comes, but not before she kind of leaves Amani. So when she gets downstairs and then she sees, these walkers, which kind of slows her down. And then we see another CRM helicopter.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, the other helicopter comes to cover the tracks of the first helicopter. They're not really interested in whether or not they're survivors. They're just interested in, like, covering the evidence. But I just wanted to say, like, really quickly, like, when she gets downstairs and she looks and she sees all these walkers that she's, like, now committed to trying to get through with her bamboo and her kitchen knife, like, she pauses. And I think that is sort of metaphorical, because it's like, you don't realize that you are currently in over your head. And you just came blasting downstairs like, F you, I'm out. I'm going back to my babies. I'm going to make it, like, where are you? How far do you need to go?
Where are they?
That is the question.
Where are you? How far do you need to go to get back to Alexandria with a kitchen knife and a bamboo? Like,
and a fanny
come
pack.
on.
Don't forget the fanny pack.
Oh, and the fanny pack, yes. The fanny pack that may or may not know. I guess Rick had the PRB at that by that point. But the fanny pack and the bamboo stick that was part of a lamp, so it's probably not even real bamboo. and a kitchen knife, a Calphalon kitchen knife. Like, come on, what are you doing? Where you didn't even like put it together like a staff or anything with like a staff. Like you just have a knife and a bamboo stick. Like to me, like saying again, Team Rick. To me, that felt very demonstrative of where Michonne has been basically since they reconnected, where she's just like guns blazing, like we're gonna do this, we're gonna get through this, blah 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 blah, without a lot of thought going into it. Quite honestly, like she's being moved by emotion, and I understand that. I can grasp that, but it's not realistic. And I'm not even talking about the realism of the show. I'm just saying, like, it's not realistic. You're not thinking, you're just feeling. Like, all this is just feeling. I feel like you should want to come home with me. I feel like we should get away. I feel like, and it's like, you gotta think, girl, what's going on? And she's the thinker. So I think this is part of what distresses me most about not just this episode, but the preceding episodes. I'm just like, what happened to the Michonne that we knew that was calculated, that could suss a situation almost immediately, and realize this is a bad guy, this is a bad situation, we shouldn't be here. Like, what happened to her?
I think those 8 years or whatever years that got Rick.
They got her too?
They got her too. Like this, you have not had, he's gone.
Soft life?
Huh?
I said she had soft life.
She ain't let nobody in Alexandria for like 7 years. So yeah.
I mean, she like, it just does not, again, like, as she was saying, when she said, this is not going the way I thought it was going to go. And so you left to go find him. It was like a, needle in a haystack. I mean, the chances of you actually finding him was just like,
and him being alive.
Right.
Yes. And then you get gassed and and you almost die and you're convalescing for a year. The new friends you made died. You can't get a hold of your daughter. But you somehow managed to reconnect with him. And then he's not going along with it the way you thought he was. He's like, you should be ecstatic and like, we're about to get out of here. Mm-hmm. Now, I still say it shouldn't have took you that long to figure out that you really needed a plan besides we're just going to sneak off and leave in the middle of the night. Because when you were standing on that roof, when you weren't supposed to be there, you saw what it was. Like, that didn't give you any pause. Because I'm not saying not to want to fight and to get back to your family, but I feel like it required a little more thought and planning.
Yeah, like the how is missing very much.
Yeah, the how is very important, right? And so CRM destroys this other helicopter. The building starts shaking and starts crumbling. Rick comes and he saves her, and they go off and they're fighting walkers and they are not on the same page. You can see it in the way that they fight. The teamwork is not there. He started saying something about some like defensible position and she's like, I don't want to hear that. You on your little like weekend warrior lingo bull. Like, no, like, commando and, so all this stuff, right? So you can see they're not on the same page at all. And they ultimately end up in like the gym for, Ashley. Okay. Just talk about round 2. This is round 2.
This is my favorite. The angst was angsting. Like, oh my God, it was so good. The part where she says, the only time I feel safe is with you. Like, she has that moment of like tenderness and vulnerability. And then in the same moment, she's like, the way you keep lying to me. And she's just very upset. The way she like hits him. It is all amazing. I mean, But I will say, and I totally agree with you, Amani. I mean, I'm not fully Team Rick, but I'm really grappling with this idea that Rick's actions don't make sense. And like he says, how does this not me? I'm sacrificing my life for you. He's basically been kidnapped. Rick is not wrong to be scared. A healthy dose of fear is what keeps you alive. Like, if it weren't for Okafor, he would have been dead. So, and that's the other thing about like Team Family. They've had a lot of luck along the way because they would have been dead at Terminus if it weren't for the luck of Carol finding them. They would have been dead with the Saviors in All Out War if it weren't for Eugene. Like, they keep getting lucky. And Rick recognizing that they're not invincible is a normal thing to me. I don't know. I think Michonne restoring his confidence is really beautiful, but I wish there was more acknowledgement of why that he should be acting like this, I guess. And also adding to that, I think Michonne, I wish she had been able to express more frustration or disappointment with him blowing up the bridge in the first place, because him sacrificing himself is what led to all of this. And that's what he's still doing. And I think that was a thread worth pulling on a bit more than not understanding what's going on here. So, as much as I did really, really, really love that argument and how angry they both kind of get to be, I wish that part was in there too.
Yeah, because so what? Let this bridge remain. Like, these walkers, like, y'all know how to kill walkers. Like, you did not have to do that. But when she said this isn't you, and he said this isn't me, how? And it's like, thank you, because he was like, what? Give him my hand, like, give him my life for you. Like, exactly, Michonne. This is exactly your husband. Your husband has like this martyr complex. Like, he is always going to sacrifice himself. He is always going to put others and the people he loved ahead of him. That's what he does. Like, why are you surprised by that?
Right.
You may not like it. And I agree with you. Like, you need to get your husband home so y'all can go back to your babies. But this is exactly who he is.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know him, this part of him, that's him. That's the same.
Yeah. That's why y'all been apart all this time.
I mean, whenever I think of Rick, I always think of that saying, get down off the cross because we need the wood. Like, he is constantly from episode 1, season 1, like, he is convinced, like, he is like, I'm going to throw myself up there and die for everybody's sins. Like, I don't
even know these people, but I'm going to die for them.
Like, even with the whole thing, like, that even precipitated, like, the bridge and everything was him trying to save these saviors instead of when Carol and Daryl and all the rest of them were like, you know what? F them, let them do whatever they're doing. But he was like, no, we got to create this bridge, to literal and figurative bridge to like help them and blah, blah, blah. Like, Rick is constantly doing this. And so to suggest that she doesn't recognize that in him is a little bit disingenuous. And speaking to what Ashley was talking about, which is, as you guys know, and I don't know if I've actually stated it on the pod, it's distressing to me. And I didn't like that whole thing, like, oh, Jada said that we can do anything, because there's a lot of caveats to it. Like Ashley just said, like, I felt that engenders like a confidence, a false confidence, because yes, Rick and Michonne separately and together are highly capable people, highly capable people in a world gone upside down, right? That's how they survived. That's how they met. That's what they see in each other, why they work. But they are not superheroes. This is not TWD, like Marvel's TWD. Like, it's some version of, like, a heightened version of the real world. And they are not superheroes. They are not immortal. They are not superhuman. So, like, the idea that she's just like, yes, we can do anything. Mm-hmm. They have a whole army. They have the whole Pennsylvania National Guard, plus whoever defected to join them. And you are 2 people. It distresses me how people treat that as, yes, they're equally matched. Like, I'm like, what are you talking about? So I just had to get that off my chest.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Even the part where she reads Patel's letter and she's like, oh, people, trying to save their own, trying to save the world their own way. Does that sound familiar? And I'm like, is there a mirror in here? Are you talking to yourself? Do you want me to give you some privacy? Because what are you talking about? You're doing the same thing.
Exactly.
This idea that your plan is just you don't have a plan. You have a thing you want to do. Like you got the destination part, but how to get there? Like you don't have that.
Right.
Right. And so I was just like, okay, girl. And she's like, oh, we don't have to be afraid, Rick. And I'm like, is you dumb?
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do. Like, forget grammar. I know that's how I meant it. Because like Ashley said, a healthy dose of fear, it keeps you alert. Right. It keeps you, aware. Like, I'm like, yes, you do have to be afraid. And there's nothing wrong with being afraid. You don't let that stop you from doing what you got to do.
Right.
But of course, there's a reason to be afraid. Your friend, that you said, your people killed my friend. Like, yeah, you have a reason to be afraid. But I was like, okay. But again, another heartbreaking moment. And she says, what do I tell your son?
Yeah.
Like, because you're afraid. Like he's never going to meet you because you're afraid. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like,
and also, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say there is something a bit jarring about the way Rick is not even like comforting her in this moment. He seems a little bit colder than
yes.
And when she says, the man I know would never talk to me like that, I'm like, yeah, that's true.
He was very cold. I put them I put it down. I wrote it down on a note. I was like, he is so cold. He is so detached. And I'm like, okay, you are so stupid because you have tried this before. Like, you think if you're detached and you're cold, that she's just going to give up and she's going to leave. Like, you told her before, like, if you love me, you'll leave. That didn't work. And she temporarily left. I know she did. She left the apartment, but.
And you had a panic attack. So what are you talking about?
And went running. Exactly.
Absolutely unserious.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, when I watched it a couple times. Like, I watched the gym section a couple times. I just watched the whole episode many times, but there were moments that I actually rewound. And that moment where she got so frustrated with him, she like pushed him. Mm-hmm. If you look at his face, that ain't like love or like he kind of gives her the exact same face she's giving him right then. Mm-hmm. When he pushes her, he kind of like he's like a brick wall in that moment. When she pushes him, and I was actually surprised. That's why I rewound it so many times, because the look on his face is almost challenging. Like, you're not gonna break through. Like, you can put your hands on me, but that's not gonna make a difference. Like, we are not on the same page about this. And I was actually quite shocked.
Yeah. And so he's like, I'm still not going. I'm not going home. So I guess we got to get out of here. And they go and they leave the gym, and we have more of that comedy that, Ashley was talking about, because they go to, kill this walker at the same time, and he pulls back his weapon or whatever, and it's blood splatter gets on her face. And she says, because she at first said, I had this, and it splatters, and she's like, really? And he's like, yeah, sorry. But he quickly darted on. He didn't, he knew. Oh, this is a problem. Like, oops, sorry. And he took off. Right?
That was not that moment in the gym anymore. He was like, oops.
Get the hell on.
And so again, they're not seeing eye to eye. The teamwork is not there, because he's yelling at her about hugging the wall, and she's like, I know. And it was just like, wow, y'all really picked the most inopportune times to be,
I mean, it's so relatable though. Like, when you're fed up with your significant other, they can't tell you anything. Do not insult my intelligence right now. Wow. I love
they were definitely giving married couple through the majority of this.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Which was nice too, because before, they never actually referred to each other as husband and wife. You inferred it. So this is the first opportunity we get to see them fully owning that husband and wife thing, and then also behaving like a husband and wife.
Embodying it. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Marriage.
That was the thing that we loved about them on the main show so much, is that they were the adults in the room. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
the way they went about their relationship, it was just like so mature. But to see them in this moment, like
Evolve.
behaving this way, like it was hilarious. It was great. And so, again, the building is still crumbling. The chandelier or whatever, the light falls and it pins Michonne. And she's like, go ahead. And I'm like, if you didn't leave when he told you to leave, you think he's going to leave? Just leave you? Like, okay.
I don't
But
think he thought he would, but like after he showed
was that
you
another
that
test? Like, I just needed to hear it?
Yes,
Yeah.
after he was acting like that in the gym, like I think
Although it just
it
seems
was-
so ridiculous. Like,
Why even
he's
say it?
not
Like,
leaving.
of course he's not going to leave,
Like,
but
even if
I needed to
he's
hear it because the way he was acting before.
not gonna let her die.
Of course not.
I ain't going
just the
home
way
with you, but I'm not gonna let you die.
Exactly.
I mean, his whole
like,
mission is to keep her alive, so of course not.
and I just liked how he like ignored her basically when she was like, "Leave me, just go, just leave me." And he was just like, "Girl, like, let me just get this bolt like done. Like, be quiet, please, because you distracted me."
Yeah, so he saves her and she's like, thank you. And he's like, you'll never have to thank me ever. I know. So sweet. And so, they get free and they're running back to the apartment. And we're told, because he tells her, this side has not started buckling yet. Like, this part is this where we are now, it's secure still.
Mm-hmm.
And they get back to the apartment, and leading up to, I guess this is round 3, but it starts with sex and goes backwards. But so again, I'm like, y'all been killing walkers. She's got blood, walker blood on her face, but whatever. The moment hit them and they had sex. And I must say that the physical part of the sex was the least interesting to me of this entire episode. But the emotional part of it, that was some heavy lifting. Like, Ashley, like, talk about that moment.
Yeah, it did lack some of the heat, I guess, that I thought was coming based on other comments. But yeah, that emotional connection was so much more interesting than everything people kind of talked up. I mean, like, yes, Michonne kissing is great, but the moment where he has the panic attack and she is finally seeing that there's some deep-seated trauma there, and she can bring him back by just putting his hand on her heart, was so beautifully done. And I mean, even when they walk into the apartment before this, like the virtual assistant says, welcome home. And that's what that moment feels like. It's Rick recognizing who and what she is to him and being welcomed home. And I thought that, I mean, then I could not have written a better sex scene, honestly, from that perspective.
Just to state again for the people in the back, it was a panic attack. It was a panic attack. It was not anything else.
Yeah.
He was having a moment. It verified by Denai, and Andrew, he was having a moment. This was like manifestation of his PTSD. It was a panic attack. It distressed me to hear people thinking it was anything else, because I was just like, how did you miss that? Like, what was going on with you that you missed that? You're just excited. I guess so. That's it. Like, they were just excited to see. They're having sex. Sadly, both of them. I mean, happily and sadly, they're both having sex for the first time in many, many years. And so I can understand theoretically why you might have thought it was something else, but it was a panic attack, people.
Yeah. And Denai even she talked about it. They had in the Entertainment Weekly, interview, she specifically talks about it. And there was a part that I didn't think about. Like, she said, read the quote, there were some initial concerns about the scene, but in my head, I'm just like, I'm not changing it. They'll catch up. And, I think Gimple said this is a love story and that the arc of that love scene really parallels the whole arc of the love story. And I think at one point also there was like some concerns that of him being impotent. Like
that it was going to be
mentioned
viewed
that
as,
too. And that was the part I was like, I don't know what. Okay. But and she's like,
that's not how it read.
No, we're not changing. And I love that. And that was like such a writer thing for Tanai to say too. And she's like, nah, I ain't changing it. They'll catch up. They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out.
Or someone will tell them.
Exactly. And they did, right? And they did. I love that.
Yeah.
But, they're cuddling after. Look, I will say this with the sex scene, though. There was a moment when I was like, no, thank you.
Same.
But just go right on past that. But anyway,
I'm very curious.
Are you going to tell?
When he was on top, the look on his face, and I was like, no, I don't want to see it. Nothing.
Yeah, no, it was. Okay. It was. We discussed it. We were like both like, oh no.
Yeah. And so they're cuddling after, and they're talking about RJ, and he's like, oh, he's feeling himself. So he's like, oh, he looks like me. So, he's good looking. And, they talk about him, and it's really sweet and it's really nice. And then they talk about the walkers and the people and how they were very skinny and how they basically probably starved themselves. They starved, and that's how they died. And then he brings up this thing, about, oh, you got to burn the crops and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, what are you talking about?
Disturbed by that. I think she was, of
course, because she knew he was not talking about no damn crops. He was talking about how he had to stick around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is when we get into, round 3. And she's like, you're still lying to me. Like, and of course, yeah, he's lying to himself. And then she gets up and he asks her about the X on her, that scar on her back, Imani. Like, talk about that.
So that scar, I mean, I wanted him to ask. Like, I was very happy that he did ask, and I was very happy that she explained where it came from and everything, because that was like one of the things even back then. What was it? Season 9, episode 10?
14.
No, 14. Sorry. Thank you. Scars, which apparently is the
anniversary yesterday.
Yeah, 5 years ago yesterday.
On the day that this one aired.
Yeah.
And also today is, I mean, I know this will come out later, but today is the anniversary of Michonne's first episode, Beside the Dying Fire.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
So, so this is the anniversary of Scars. So this was the episode in which Michonne ran into her college friend, Jocelyn. And Jocelyn had children that she was supposedly taking care of. Little did we know that she was like warping their little minds. And Michonne, knowing her from college, welcomed her into Alexandria, because that was when Michonne still had like an open door policy in Alexandria, brought her, Jocelyn, and the children in. And then Jocelyn proceeded to turn on her and steal all the children in Alexandria, kind of like the Pied Piper. And as we discussed before, Michonne and Daryl, Michonne's 7 months, like we didn't know how pregnant. She looked heavily pregnant, but now we actually know how pregnant she was. She was 7 months pregnant, and she had to go out with Daryl and find these children. And in the process of finding them, they branded her and Daryl with this X, with the plan of also killing them. And Michonne ended up having to do something that she really didn't want to do to get away, that involved killing Jocelyn and the children and stuff. And so, of course, when she's telling Rick the story, she's like, don't ask me what I had to do to get away or get the kids back. And of course, Rick was like, which this is the second time in the episode, Tanisha talked about the first time, in which they speak they're killers. We know this. They're good at what they do. They're highly trained at this point. But I just don't recall. Well, maybe with the Saviors at one point in the beginning, just them being quite so flippant about killing people, like just being like, you killed him, I'm gonna kill him, you killed them, right? You got rid of him. So they talk about that about Jadis that way. And then now he, I guess feeling like sort of secondhand like anger at the idea that someone was trying to kill Michonne while she was pregnant and he was not there. He's kind of like, you killed her, right? And Michonne's like, yeah, I did. And, I think it was a moment, like I said, where Rick kind of was like, I was not there to protect her. I was not there to protect my child. And I think it creates a interesting parallel between him not being there for that and then her reveal a few minutes later that she doesn't know, she lied and she doesn't know where Judith is and what's going on with Judith. And no one's really talking about it because she, no one said anything. Like I didn't hear in the chat or anybody saying anything when she told Rick the first time that Judith was fine. And in my mind, I was very much like, she's lying. Judith got shot. Like people forget Judith got shot in the one of the last episodes of Walking Dead. I mean, she survived and everything, but Michonne has no idea. I mean, Judith could have died. She had to get, I think it was a battlefield transfusion from Daryl. Like Michonne literally does not have any idea. Not only,
I think we did talk about, or maybe we talked about it offline, but yeah.
I mean, we did talk about
she lied.
We did talk about the fact that she doesn't know, but like we didn't talk about the fact to the extent she doesn't know. Like she does not know that Judith got shot. Like Judith could have been dead. And this is the first moment where I felt like she really, I mean, she talks about it in the gym, like how she's like, I would never forgive myself if something happened to them. And then she like fully admits here that she has no idea how Judith is.
Yeah. And so she reminds him that he didn't push the button, that he's had it this entire time and he could have pushed it and he didn't. And that, the building starts to crumble and he's like, we have to go. And she's like, no, because Nat told her, you have to know when to go. And she's like, it's not time. And we're not leaving until we know where we're going. Right. And so she says, I'm sorry for what they did to you. And she wants to know, what they did to him. And she also says, and this is before he really goes into it and breaks down. And she says, why did you come after me? And he says, well, you know why. And it's, again, just, I want to hear it. And this is when he says, you're the love of my life. And it felt like his heart was being ripped out of his chest when, he saw her, walk away. And she tells him how CRM gassed her and how she lost a year. She lost a year with her kids. She almost died, that they've taken so much from them and we can't give them more of ourselves, and you can't stay and you can't sacrifice yourself for the CRM because they're not real, but me, like our family, our love, like this is real.
Yeah.
Right. And so we had a submission from one of our listeners named JoJo, and she says, is something so beautiful that what finally broke through to Rick for him to open up is Michonne saying he was hurting her. How do you think this episode did in addressing Michonne's pain? And the biggest of thank yous to Deny, the amazingly talented writer, because she says this back and forth. You're hurting me, and that's not how you love. Ashley, talk about that.
Firstly, I'm very glad that Michonne was able to note here, if nowhere else, she said here, I have not been acting like myself. And that kind of just made me feel better about the whole episode. All of her actions previously, yes, this has made her into someone she doesn't recognize either. But I'm even happier that, this was an episode really, where Michonne is able to express her pain. She is righteously angry, like she has gone on this journey and she is so close to succeeding. And the one thing that's stopping her is the person she's trying to save. Like, I'm sure that's insane to her. So
Yeah.
I'm really, really glad that she got to express that he's hurting her. I think Danai is probably the only person who could have done this, right? So yeah, I'm really, really glad that she was able to write this. But yeah, I love that she got to say that.
Yeah. And so Rick just lets it all out. And this is the part where it's about asking the right question. And she said, "What did they do to you?" Because she was busy trying to understand, why is he behaving the way he's behaving? Like, why are you doing this? But it's really about what did they do to you that has caused you to be this way? Like, him not wanting to leave, him trying to save the people he loved. That's kind of like the symptom of what they have done, right? And so he goes through, and Ashley and Imani, you both can talk about all the things that he said about losing Carl and then losing her, and how he couldn't do it again. He could not survive losing her again. Like, he did it once, I can't do it again. Like, Imani, what did you think about Rick's, confession?
Come to me first, because Ashley's about to cry.
You're a good little moderator. Yes.
Yes. I mean, I thought it was moving, and it really it said a lot to me. I behind the scenes, I likened it to in the Hurricane, Denzel Washington's movie, where he it's based on a true story, where he is what's his name? Reuben Hurricane Carter. He did a long stretch of time in jail. And early on, he asks his wife to stop coming to jail because he can't do this long time that he's got to do if he keeps seeing her. He's got to, like, basically what Rick said, he's got to die to make this work. And if she keeps coming back to, like, bringing him back to life, it's just not going to work. And then on top of it, for Rick, he's like, and if we do this and you die in the attempt, I can't live with that. That they're like, what? Because imagine this. Like, imagine they go to Alexandria and kill all Rick's people and then drag him back. Like, who's to say they kill him, right? And they drag his ass back. How would he survive? Like, how would he survive that? I completely understood what he was trying to say there. He was just like, I have done the necessary work, and we saw it, which is what I love about episode 1. We saw him do that work. We saw him shut his emotions down after years and years and years of trying to get away, trying to get back to them. He finally was like, you know what? This is where I am. I have to make this work. I have to kill you guys off. Like someone else was saying, I was so moved by this too, when Thorne said, they're not gone, we're gone. Like, and him really having to come and make that, like, turn in his head. Like, I am gone. I am dead. I am the Walking Dead again. Like, who, as many people have noted, Michonne is the one, when he said that the first time, who pushed against that and was like, no. We're not doing that. We're not the Walking Dead. We are trying to make a life for ourselves. We're trying to survive and live. And so he's saying that again, and not in those words, but he's basically saying that again. Like, I've become the Walking Dead, and you will bring me back to life, and then I will not be able to kill myself again. Which is like, oh my God.
Yeah. Ashley,
okay, you're together, Ashley. Come on.
I'm really not. I'm back to where I started because, everything you said, I completely agree with. Like, when I was watching the episode, I was sobbing, so I'm better now. But yeah, when Rick says, "What if I lose you and I can't figure out how to die again?" I just lost it. I was like, Jesus, the acting, like 10, 10, 10 across the board, and also Carl being the thing that centers him again, and the reason they reconnect is so lovely, and it rings true. And again, I think Danai is the only writer that really would have thought to truly tap into that.
Mhm.
I'm still not sure why Gimple decided to kill him anyway. And the thought that Rick wasn't able to properly describe Carl to the artist, that's because he had lost his face. It was
Yeah.
just, it broke me. So,
Oh.
and it also made the more questionable aspect of last episode a little bit more emotionally satisfying. Sorry for laughing, but it's true.
It's true.
Yeah. But no, this is a really beautiful climax to this episode, and the emotional crux of what they're going through, I thought was really described beautifully by Denai.
Yeah. So, Benjiro's talents show up again in this episode. We said what we said.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
ain't changing no minds over here. So, we get this, she presents him with this image of Carl. And, the reason I love this moment so much is because and Denai kind of talks about it too in interviews, like she realizes that she can't keep pushing. You can't browbeat someone. And I've learned this recently in real life, in that when you want someone to do something, you want them to change, even when it's for them, for themselves, for their health.
Yeah.
You can't browbeat them into it. You can't yell, you can't scream, you can't be angry. They're going to shut down. They'll talk, but they're not going to communicate. They're not going to open up. And it could be about something that's going to keep them alive. You could say, okay, and you can't have this and I used to have this too, this very kind of like Nike, like just do it mindset, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you need to stop doing drugs? Well, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just do it. Like, because I don't, I'm thankful I don't have any kind of addiction, right? You need to stop drinking? Well, just do it. Just stop. Bulimic, just stop. And that doesn't work. And she finally, it seems like she stopped with the browbeating, she stopped with the pettiness, she stopped with all of that. And it was about being gentle, and it was about giving him this space to be understanding and to be able to open up and tell her what was going on. And so I thought that was just like really just like a beautiful moment. It could, even when she told him, like, you're still lying to me, it wasn't an accusation. It was still gentle, and she was still gentle with him. And so yeah, they finally, as the building is crumbling down around them, they leave. I let me say this about, because I was about to mention it and I forgot we didn't mention it, going off of what Ashley said about, was it Ashley or one of you said something about Rick being, this technology is like messing him all up.
That was Ashley. Yeah.
It really messed him. He was like, what in the heck? And she said, I just got one before, the world changed and stuff. So again, the humor. Yeah. And then Rick being this like totally different person. It's like, you don't understand the Roomba. You don't like, it's like these two people who are like live these totally different lives, it seems like, and how they, like, kind of going back to what Deanna said, how they found each other, all this group of people who normally probably would have nothing to do with each other. Right. Like they found each other. But there was a funny moment to me that I forgot. Amani, what were you about?
Well, just related to what you just said, Screen Crush, they made a state. They talked about that a little bit, and they talked about the fact that, if and so, like, one way or another, we knew from the little flashback that we got of Michonne that she was a successful woman. Whether or not she was a lawyer or not, is unknown. But she was a successful woman, cosmopolitan, and he was, Black woman, and he's this like small town white sheriff's deputy. Like, in the real world, the chances that they would, I'm sure there's someone who could jump into our comments and be like, hey, Black lawyer married to a white deputy. Ma'am, we're not talking to you, please. But generally speaking, that is not a combination that we would probably normally see. And it took this world to create that. So, definitely that too. But I just wanted to backtrack just a minute to talk about the fact, because, a lot of people didn't love the sex scene for reasons other than what the reasons we didn't adore it, the physicality of it. But Denai in that same article was talking about how, you know, they needed it to help Rick open up, like how to like excavate his feelings. Like that sex scene actually served a purpose. It was not just an extraneous sex scene because all the Rishoners or whatever wanted it. It was because
it was part of the story. There was story.
Yeah, it was part of the story, and he needed that in order to like kind of come home and to like you said, to open up, and for her to be able to be like, okay, I see this. And like you said, this is not a just do it. This is something deeper going on that we need to dig into. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, because like, you know, it's easy to just be like, oh, the sex scene was A+, or it was, you know, C-. And like,
it's deeper than that.
Yeah, it's much deeper than that. And it's definitely like when you talk about like a movie and the setting is one of the characters, like the sex scene was essential for that purpose.
And it's interesting because, you know, social media is on this weird thing about how we should get rid of sex scenes in movies and point lists and all this stuff. And this is one that really knocks against that completely, because it was absolutely needed. And like we said, it was part of moving the story forward.
I question what they're watching, because I don't see many sex scenes in the TV shows that I watch. Like I don't see it.
Yeah.
I think when they go there, and that can sometimes be jarring, like, you know, like Euphoria or something.
Yeah.
But all these shows don't do that. And I always try and think about what shows I watch, but, you know, I watch the same like 3 or 4 shows over and over again, and there was no sex in any of those shows. So maybe I'm a little like, you know, distorted on it. But what were you saying, Imani?
I was just saying that there's a disconnect between what people are thinking they're seeing and what's actually happening. Because yes, there's this like Gen Z doesn't want as much sex and da-da-da-da, but even speaking as a published writer, that sex still sells. So despite what people are saying about how much sex they want to see and how much sex is, you know, distresses them or, you know, turns them off, and how they want to see, you know, the fullness of human relationships and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, girl, but you also want this sex.
The data is showing otherwise.
Exactly. So, I mean, are we turning into are we reverting to a puritanical culture? I'm seriously scared.
Look,
we never really broke off, you know.
Right. We were never that far away from it.
Exactly. But it feels like we're falling back into it, which is a little
this author, I saw that she was like posting some like in her IG like post, she had like some different comments from like reviews. And then I was reading them, and then one of them said, well, it could be a little less raunchy. And I was like, oh, one click, like, let me go get that one. So yeah, unlikable characters, and yeah, you ain't gonna get, I mean, I don't typically read like erotica, but because I had a feeling just based on what I heard about that book, it wasn't anything outrageous. So, but yeah, point taken about the whole sex thing. It was very much needed, and it made sense.
Sign me up.
Right.
And so yeah, and they leave, they get out there, they find this yellow pickup truck, and it's, you know, Rick can't drive stick, I guess.
Well, he has one hand, not because he can't.
I mean, there's that too, but I mean, do as I say, not as I do, but I don't grip the wheel when I drive, so it's possible. Is it smart? No, but
are you driving with your knee?
Sometimes, depending on what road I'm on.
What if you have to turn though?
Well, then I would, but I feel like if you're because he could put his little stump through the space in there and
okay,
turn it. I mean, it wouldn't be smart. It would not be
Not when you have someone with you who can drive.
Exactly. So I mean, I'm not dinging him for not driving. I'm just saying, you know, if he had to, he could have.
No, but some people did think it's because he can't drive stick, and it was like
probably. But I mean, yeah,
people didn't get it.
Right.
Like there was a decent amount of people who didn't even get it. They were like, well, why can't he drive the car? And it's like, because
they didn't realize the manual.
Oh, they don't even know what stick means.
Yeah, probably.
Exactly. Like
that too, yeah.
But before they get out, like, can we just take a moment to like appreciate that they take the time to show that they are back in sync and they are like walkers, like the machine that they are, the finely tuned machine.
I love that
they
scene
are.
so much.
Very much so. A lot of attitude.
A big fight, yes.
A lot
and
of confidence.
Just like all over each other and kissing every chance they got.
Exactly.
Like, I loved that so much.
The whole thing.
They are, for the moment, on the same page.
Yes.
For the moment, yes.
The big caveat. Well, there's 2 episodes left, so
That's
yes,
true.
for the
That's
moment.
true.
So, okay. 2 episodes left.
Hold on, I still have some things to say.
Go. Yeah.
Well, mainly just about the song at the end. Actually, the song at the beginning I thought was really great too. I don't know if then I chose that one, but what was it? It was
the yellow ribbon
around yellow ribbon.
Yeah. So that one was really good for where they were at the beginning of the episode, but this one at the end I thought was probably most likely that I had something to do with it. It's a South African song called Abise Asibe Happy, which was I looked up some of the lyrics and it said, "We are happy, we are in love. They've tried to separate us, they failed. Let's be happy together." So that was a really beautiful fitting in for the episode and for the episode that I wrote. So
yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, and it was very, very. Can I talk about how much? I mean, other people thought it was corny, but can I talk about how much I loved that they took the time to make out as they were switching?
Oh my god, yes!
I love that. So
I remember
like,
when
more
we
than
saw
elevator
that scene like being filmed, and y'all were like, "That's not what that is," and I'm like, "Okay, we'll see."
Because why would they not?
But yeah,
I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, I heard someone say like, if they hadn't been like a walker that came right up to the window, then perhaps they would have kept going.
Yeah. That walker scared me. Like, I don't get scared by the Walking Dead that much, but I actually jumped.
I did jump too. I was like, oh, yeah.
Even Rick was like, oh,
yeah.
He was like, let's go. Like,
that's funny. Yeah, I love the levity at the end of the episode. After that, like all the emotion, it was, just a little bit of lightness.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, we have enough to get back home." Now, did they look at some mail on the desk or something? Do you even know where you are? And where, I mean, could they get back home? Are they still on the West Coast? Are they still like relatively close? Or in the Midwest? Like,
I'm hoping she dropped them off somewhere closer to home. Just
Tanisha, you are killing the vibe.
I don't know.
She's like, oh, we got enough to get back home.
We don't know. I looked up Greenwood, and even the Walking Dead wiki was like, we don't know what state they're in.
No, I truly don't believe that. I mean, if we're gonna be real, that part of it, as much as I loved it, I was just kind of like, okay, girl, like, first of all, so the yellow truck with the tires in the back and the ethanol is all gassed up and ready and charged up.
Well, they were prepared people.
I mean, I just wish that at least they had to go to like a couple different windows or cars to
waste the time.
We didn't have time for that. We had to finish out that.
I mean, clearly, and then the idea that they were like, "Ooh, we have enough to get back." Like, how do you know this? Like, how?
I think showing them checking the different doors is like the equivalent of starting your book with someone waking up and brushing their teeth. Like,
I just
don't do it.
But it adds to like, okay, so getting back into that, it adds to too many convenient contrivances that, by itself, if that had been the only little convenient thing, I that would have been cool. But you add that to
all the other stuff.
the lake that was conveniently there to jump into, the what do you call it, the crash, the helicopter having crashed, like after, like if it had crashed, if they had to jump out because it was crashing, I would have been like, fine. But it crashed after they jumped out, and like you said, oh my God, you saved us. And then, then the building is crumbling, but just, enough to let us have this whole, like, hash out this whole issue. And then it only completely collapses.
It's symbolism.
Once, again, I get it, but there are ways to do it that doesn't seem so convenient. And again, yes, you want to watch them go from car to car to car? No, but after so many things like just worked out so perfectly, which makes me wonder, I'm like, does that mean that inversely everything in next episode is going to work out bad? Like it's going to,
I'll have a good
I just want to say that our friend of the pod who helps us a little bit said that figure that figure that's coming up the trail in the preview look like 3 raccoons in a trash can.
Bye.
Oh my gosh.
I almost died. So thank you for that to our friend, because I almost died listening.
Oh my gosh. Y'all are being the worst. Look, so we had another listener submitted something, and it was basically, a comment, not a question. Okay. Tasha said, I loved it and can't stop watching it of episode 4. I was dancing in front of my TV at the end of the episode. Regardless of how the season ends, episode 4 is my ending for this season. And so it had me be thinking about, like, we don't know what 5 and 6 holds for us. Do we need a season 2? Like, if we have a reunion, I didn't say, did you want a season 2? But if some kind of way, I don't see how, but let's say 5 and 6, they get back home and they reunite with their kids. All right. If it ends with a family reunion, would that be okay? Like Scott Gimple has talked about having these like almost like crossover type things, like it's a Avengers type thing where you have, Daryl Dixon, and then you have, a season of this, The Ones Who Live. And then, they have their stories contained within their series. And then they come together at the end, almost like some like Avengers, Marvel, cinematic universe type thing.
Yeah.
So could you see like ending with a Grimes family reunion here at episode 6, and then in the future on a different show, have them dealing with the CRM with more of their friends and family?
Personally,
I could see it. Yeah. Sorry.
I mean, no. I was just saying, personally, I felt like this could have ended the episode. I mean, I do not theoretically, I would like to see them reunited with the kids and everything like that. But the way this ended, and it was so joyful and everything, this could have been the end for me. Like I could have lived with this being the end, but there are 2 more episodes. And so we know that the CRM thing is not concluded. Like if they had said that this is the conclusion, like Jadis is not the Jadis we think she is, who's going to be like, oh no, y'all people got away. But if Jadis wasn't the Jadis we thought she was, and she was not a factor, and they just had escaped, like people thought they were dead and they had escaped, this would have been good for me to close out.
Yeah.
But knowing that there are 2 more episodes in which stuff is going to have to happen, I feel like, no, I need another season, because I can't see how you can close out the CRM stuff into 2 episodes.
Could it be that they don't? Could it be that they don't resolve the CRM thing? Like they don't bring down the CRM, but like this is like a
just get away from them.
They get away from them. That's like the book. You've ended this particular arc, this little story, but there's a larger story to be had when you bring in more characters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it would.
How would you be okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in my mind, there would be like things that I would expect. Like that would mean that Jadis would have to die. And then that would mean that Thorne would have to let them go. Because I don't see them killing Thorne. So I'm thinking Thorne would be like, you're my friend and I have to let you go. And they let them go or something. And that's how it kind of, it would have to be to me, it would have to be some version of that. But I also had all sorts of requirements for episode 1. They didn't do any of the things I expected, and I was ecstatic with it. So take it with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still so very impressed by episode 1. I mean, for 6 years, we were like, how? And they did, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's how. That works. Thank you.
Exactly.
Appreciate it. Yeah. How about you, Ashley, when it comes to how this 6th season event will end and what you need to see and to be okay with it?
I mean, I want a season 2. That is true. Whether it's needed definitely depends on how the season ends. And I can see it going like they get home to their kids and maybe there's a hint that there's still the CRM threat looming somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go into this bigger show with all the other people. I'm not completely interested in that because I can't think of anyone from Team Family I really need to see right now. But that feels like the most likely, unless they just change their minds about what they're trying to do. I mean, Andy said they left this season as its own thing, but like it's the closing of a chapter, an arc, like you said, but it could lend itself to more. So maybe based on the ratings, they'll be like, let's do a season 2. But in my head at this moment, I think that whatever more we get will be part of this larger universe that Scott Gimple has been talking about.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. The only concern with that is you just don't know what the future holds. Like you can make all these plans all you want to, but maybe like Andy's like, you know what? I'm really done with this acting thing.
My story. Yeah, like, that's the thing that, because I know that him and then I came back to finish this story. So if they come back to do even more, I don't know. Maybe it just depends on how they're feeling at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we are getting a completed story because this is what we've been waiting for. And I think it does end with them, hopefully, with their children.
Thanks. Okay. So that was episode 4 of The Ones Who Live. Now, we talk a lot about character and, this drama and all this other kind of stuff. So I figure like we should give people like some recommendations if they like this kind of show. In particular, they like this episode where it's communicating and the messiness of people getting to the truth and just like this good character work that we could give some recommendations for some shows that if you like this episode, then you probably like these shows, right? And I mentioned one, we could do like a round robin thing, but I mentioned last episode, like my favorite show is The Americans. And so it was on FX. You can catch it. I think it's on Hulu. You can catch it on Hulu. But that's my favorite television show, The Americans with Kerry Russell.
And Matthew Reese.
And Matthew Reese. I mean, yes, that man too. But I mean, I did love Philip. Matthew was.
I was gonna say he
was my favorite. I did. I think he was my favorite of those two. And of course, not taking anything away from Kerry Russell and how amazing she was, but just his character, to see his character change. I mean, they both changed, but to see the evolution that, Matthew does with Philip, to see where he was in the first episode, to see like this, like confusion and these doubts and these changes about what they're doing and should they be doing this. And she's, Elizabeth is all about the motherland. And he's like, okay, but my kids and my family. And like, that's all I care about. And even when we got to the end of the series to see how
it
kind of went differently. Yeah, so The Americans is mine. One of mine. Ashley.
Yeah, so anybody who has ever spoken to me might know that Mad Men is my favorite show of all time. Like one of my favorite things ever in TV is just watching people talk in rooms. So that's Mad Men. The Suitcase is perhaps my favorite TV episode of all time, and it reminded me a lot of this episode of The Ones Who Live. It hit a lot of those same beats of two people who love each other, just spending enough time together that they kind of resolve their issues and grow closer because of it. So that is my number one recommendation always.
Awesome. Imani.
Before I say it, can I just say that it's really interesting that you said that, because there was an article where they talked about the fact that this was not a bottle episode, this Michonne and Rick. It was a suitcase episode because of the suitcase. Yeah. They said that is like a different type of bottle episode. Yes. And they said because of the suitcase, like that's what it's called now because of that episode of Mad Men. So you were right. So I really don't tend to have favorite movies or favorite television shows. I just love too much of the medium. And if you ask me on a different day, it'll be a different like thing. So I just try not to have like favorites. So just for our first round, I will say, and I also want to say that I am been a sucker for HBO since I was about 5 years old. Mm-hmm. When they used to show Fraggle Rock, and and like they haven't done anything wrong as far as I'm concerned since then. Yeah. So you will notice a theme in my
season 8 of Game of Thrones.
I mean, yeah, no. There are definitely like mistakes in there, and even in my favorite stuff, there are mistakes in there. Okay. But generally speaking, as far as I'm concerned, HBO can do no wrong. I mean, really, even the stuff on AMC that have been hits have been the stuff that HBO decided stupidly that they did not want. So I just feel like all roads lead back to HBO. It's not TV, it's HBO. Okay. So my first. This
is not an ad.
Yeah, this is not an ad, but it should be. HBO should be paying me at this point because I have been paying them for so long. The Leftovers, which is a David Lindelof show that was based on a book by I think it's David Peralta. Tom Peralta? Is that it? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Very worth watching. It's about like the premise is what was it, 20% of the world?
2%.
Was it only 2%?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it was still devastating, but it was actually a relatively small percent of the world just disappeared, kind of raptured, and you just didn't know where they went to and what the rest of the world would have to deal with. So
yeah,
The Leftovers.
So another of mine. Okay, this is interesting because you said HBO and mine seems to be FX. The Shield. And I feel like this kind of started this whole, like, it was there with The Sopranos and all of that, and these like anti-heroes, and it's about these cops in LA, and they're not good guys. They're not good guys. I mean, just it's one of those things like that true anti-hero. It's like you find yourself, you're following them until you're wanting them to win. But every now and then you remind they do something or say something, you're like, wow, these are really not like good people. Now, unlike this foolishness of like, if we had followed the saviors first, we would be down for them. This kind of is that way. Like we're following them. And so we are kind of find ourselves rooting for them, but it's just them dealing with like crime and we're talking about murder. We're talking about drug trafficking. And again, they're bad cops that have great, numbers. They get the arrests. They get the, and that eventually leads to, getting these criminals off the street. And because it's making the numbers look good, they're, people are turning a blind eye to what they're doing. So The Shield. Okay. Ashley.
Well, The Leftovers was actually my second one.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. And I'll just add that The Leftovers reminds me of what The Walking Dead could have been. Like, it's not zombies, of course, but it's still that kind of high concept and the emotions of the show and the processing of grief and trying to love. It's really an astounding show. And the second season features Regina King.
Yes.
So since we said that, I'll also add Better Call Saul, which is the prequel to Breaking Bad, and it's like it still has like the adrenaline and the stakes of Breaking Bad, but like the character drama of like a Mad Men or a Leftover. So yeah, I would add that to my list as my second one.
Okay, so I'm gonna take that off my list because you.
My bad.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, Imani.
Second choice. My second one is Watchmen. So another Damon Lindelof. It's a reimagining, kind of continuing story of the Watchmen that were introduced in the 80s. And it goes in a kind of different direction. It shows like the Oklahoma City police department they've been having a problem with crime. They've been having a problem with these people who follow Rorschach, who was one of the characters from the original comic. And he was very dedicated to knowing the truth and exposing the truth, but he was also kind of racist and everything. And so that's the part that they've kind of glommed onto, the racism. So like they're basically the Klan in Rorschach masks. And so and they are very bold, and they have been attacking the Oklahoma City Police Department. So they've allowed the police department to wear costumes. And because this is in the Watchmen world, we've already seen crime fighters wear costumes, like vigilantes wear costumes. So they wear costumes. And Regina King's character, who was also in The Leftovers, as Ashley said, she is Sister Night. That is her character. She is the nun with the MMFing gun. And she is she's got a very interesting home life that you have to watch to figure out. And it is a very it's amazing show. It like what he managed to do with it. The fact that all these people learned about the Tulsa was it the Tulsa massacre? Riot? Well, it's not it wasn't a riot. It was a massacre.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, like because of this show, like the opening of this show, and people thinking it was fake when it was a real incident that he managed to write into the show and give being to and breathe life into, so that all these people would know about it. And he continued that whole summer, because there was also Lovecraft Country where they talked about it too. So just bringing that racial aspect into it, but in a way that was very instructive and heartfelt and stuff. And considering it was a white creator, but he did smartly have a Black writer's room.
Including Cord Jefferson, who wrote American Fiction.
Exactly, and just got an Oscar.
He wrote the episode where we have the look back into Regina's
Angela Abar. That one. Okay,
I think he wrote that.
Oh yeah. And he's an Emmy for that, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
So just an amazing show. Check it out.
So I'm gonna do my third one. We're each gonna give one more, and then if we have more, we'll put it in the description so you guys can get those. But my other one, FX again, is and Amani's not gonna be shocked, is Justified. I love this show so much, and it's about a U.S. like deputy marshal who starts out in Miami And because he's just brought too much attention and too much heat, he has to go back to his hometown or his, back to Kentucky, which is like, he doesn't want, like, the line he says is like, I grew up there. I don't want to go back there. And he's surrounded by his family and people he grew up with. And it starts out a bit procedural where you're seeing different people that they have to capture and bring back into custody. But then there's also this overarching, dealing with his ex-wife, who he's still in love with, but who's married, and dealing with another woman who is always, cared about him and liked him. He's dealing with his somewhat of a friend from back. Well, they weren't friends, but they dug coal together.
They becomes,
that annoyed the hell out of me. I'm like, so I don't care. Like, he's an antagonist, and he's this great lawman who always seems to just get into some drama and foolishness of his own making. But it's just a fantastic show. Fantastic. And there is an episode, and I forgot the season it's in, where you get to see Scott Wilson. He's in one of those episodes, and it's hilarious. Hilarious. But yeah, Justified, FX, you'll catch it on Hulu. It's a great show. And Ashley.
Okay, so my final show is Bojack Horseman, which is, this may throw you off because it is animated, but it is such, it's basically the animated version of Mad Men to me. It is about a horse who is a washed up 90s actor, but he still lives in Hollywood, and it's about his, trials and tribulations with his friends. But it looks at relationships and damage and addiction and intergenerational trauma and just what it means to do better and be better as a person, even though they're not technically people. And it's just an amazing show. I mean, there are some episodes where I was just sobbing. I mean, not that it's hard to make me cry, but it's very good.
I've never watched that. I'm going to have to give it a shot.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
Netflix.
Yes, Netflix.
Okay. And Imani, here's your third.
All right. So there's a series of HBO shows that I could mention, but because you mentioned Justified, I have to go with Deadwood. So I was like, you took Justified from me.
Oh yeah,
by Timothy Oliphant.
Timothy.
So Deadwood, it's a show by David Milch. It's about a lawman who is an actual historical figure, Seth Bullock, who is trying to settle the Dakotas, I think it is. Was it the Dakotas? I think. I might be, right? But it's like a little bit before statehood, when they're still like speculating and stuff like that. And it's like still the kind of the Wild West. And now you're going to go into this. If you go into it completely sight unseen, based on my recommendation, you're going to be like putting messages in the comments, cursing me out because they do not speak like normal people. And you have to acclimate yourself to the language. There's a lot of cursing, lots and lots and lots and lots of cursing. And they just speak in a very idiosyncratic sort of poetic style. It's very, it gives almost Shakespearean, and it does take some getting used to. I almost quit Deadwood like a couple times because of it, because I just could not initially stand it. But once you get into the groove of it, it's just a bunch of really well written characters. There's a character who starts out as basically the villain of the piece, Al Swearingen, who by the end do you love Al? Yes, but in that way, like a character that you kind of love to hate to love. Like he's that kind of guy. So, but you're attached one way or another. You're attached to him, and it's just gunfights and double crossing and OK corralling, but with a lot of character work happening and a lot of talking.
Which we all like, as you can see.
I mean, clearly.
Love to
How long is this episode?
watch people. I mean,
Exactly.
look, okay, so you're right. We need to wrap this up. But Imani,
What?
tell the people about a very special podcast episode we'll be doing a couple of weeks after episode 6.
Okay, so after episode 6, we're going to take a look back at the Walking Dead as a whole. But we did do like previews where we talked about Michonne and we talked about Rick and Michonne and like what was going on. But this is going to be kind of an overarching look back at the show and but to add a little like spice to it, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be asking for your input to give us a little room to play. We'll talk about your headcanons, your crack theories, your wish lists. What would you have liked to do if you had your way? If you had gotten rid of everybody and it was only about Rick and Michonne from the beginning? If you think that Daryl and Carol have a secret baby somewhere, whatever it is, your secret, your crack theories, whatever your headcanons are. I have a few crazy ones myself. Like, give them to us. We want to hear them. And that's why we're going to give ourselves a little like headway with why we're telling you now, so that you can like really start thinking about it. So you can give us some good stuff. Whack stuff is not going to be taken. We're looking for premium headcanon, premium crack theories, premium wish lists. Okay. And we will share the link on Twitter. We will put it in our video description below, and we'll also have it on the Tumblr. So you can't say that you didn't know, and you can't say that you don't know how to tell us. We are here. Give it all to us.
Yeah. And that includes all seasons. If it was something from season 1, if you had some kind of like theory or whatever about Dale, or if it was about, season 10, or, like one of my general things is like, I feel like they told us that Maggie was a good leader instead of showing us in season 6. And so that's one of my things. So like Imani said, we want the good stuff, because if you have something that's really original or really interesting, then we're going to invite you on to the podcast, to discuss it with us. So be on the lookout for that.
Bring it.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. So that's it for this week's episode. Thank you for watching. But before you go, drop into the comments section and let us know. As much as we'd all love a season 2, based on episode 4, do you think you could be satisfied if we only get one season of The Ones Who Live? Let us know. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. See you next week.